Welcome back to the SSAS and MDX training sessions. So in last session, we discussed about writing scope statements and creating calculated measures and um, everything related to the calculations page. Now, today we will be discussing about maybe aggregations, perspectives, and KPIs. So first, let's start with the aggregations. You are familiar with the partitions, right? Partitions improves the performance. It improves the performance of the querying as well as the processing. If queue processing with single partition takes 10 hours due to the data that it has in the fact table, and if you create partitions, definitely it's gonna be better than the earlier processing time, like 10. Earlier was 10 hours, right? That's what we are showing. So it will be at least it's gonna save at least 2 to 3 hours easily. Okay. And if you define your partitions even better, I mean in a better way, then it's gonna improve the processing time as well as the querying time. I also showed you why the querying performance will be improved when we create partitions by showing the XML file where it will go and pick all the attribute key values starting minimum value and the maximum value and store it in the partition info.xml file. So that helps analysis services to give it gives a hint that okay, you are looking for a customer ABC. He does not have any data in the current partition in partition one, so it won't query that partition, and it will go to the next partition. Next partition says that okay, ABC customer data is not available in my partition too. Then it will go to the next partition. So in this process, it is gonna skip so many partition reads. So that's gonna save the time. That's how the querying performance will be improved if you have partitions. Now, let's see the aggregations. We discussed that analysis services cube is nothing but creating the dimensions and measure groups and the relationship between these two. And when you select process, it reads the data and it creates the indexes and it creates the aggregations. Now, let's see what is the use of aggregations and how to create the aggregations and what are the types of aggregations. So firstly, aggregations are telling the server that aggregate the data or create as many aggregations as possible by the attribute selection that I'm selecting as part of the design. So if I design an aggregation here, I will specify what attributes will be queried very frequently by the users and what attributes this aggregation design has to take and create more aggregations so that the querying performance will be improved. The main purpose of the aggregations is improving the query performance. So by default, analysis services will create aggregated data when you select process, when you do process. If you define aggregations, it create more and more aggregations. By the definition, you are telling the server, okay, a particular attribute will be used very frequently, a particular attribute will be used in where class very frequently. So create more aggregations on that, or create aggregations for this particular attribute for every measure that we have so that the querying will be improved if it is used. So we'll see one by creating one aggregation and then you will understand that. There are two types of aggregations. One is regular aggregation and another one is usage-based aggregation. First, we will see how to create the regular aggregation. So for that, you need to select the Design Aggregations tab, which will open the welcome wizard, which says that use this wizard to design storage options for the data and aggregations in your cube. Aggregations are pre-calculated summaries of data that make querying of the cube faster. So as it's mentioned here, it pre-calculated the summaries of the data, which will be useful if you query the data at that grain. So click on next. The first page is you have to select what attributes are very frequently used and how many aggregations you want to create, the full aggregation or no aggregations or default aggregations. There are four different options you have. If you keep your mouse here, it will give you the hint. The designer applies a default rule based on the type of the attribute of the dimension. So if you select default for this for every attribute, then it will see what is the data type of this, and based on that, it creates the number of aggregations. Analysis services will decide that. If you select full, in every aggregation of every measure, this particular attribute, whatever you are selecting as full, will be included. So every measure, if you drag, and if you drag this attribute in your Excel, then the performance, I mean, it uses this aggregation where it will be having pre-summary data, pre-calculated summary data, and the querying will be just like a flash. It will be pretty faster compared to the non-aggregations, querying the non-aggregate, no, I mean, querying the partition without aggregations. And none means don't define any aggregations. Let's say you have some attributes which are not used very frequently. Out of 1,000 queries, only one time the attribute is used. Then you can eliminate the aggregation for that. I mean, including the attribute in the aggregation. So you can exclude it, not include. You can exclude the attribute by from the aggregation design. And unrestricted means no restrictions are placed on the aggregation designer, so it can be included in everything or nothing. It depends on the aggregate. It depends on the attribute type, and it decides by the. Analysis services decides that. Okay. Now by default, everything is default. So you are giving option to analysis services to decide what aggregation design can include what attributes based on the data type of the attributes. Let's say, for example, as you all know, we're using this customer very frequently. So I would like to create full aggregations for that, which means for every measure that I have, if there is for every aggregation, use this customer. So every sum of sales, sum of profit, sum of this, whatever the matrix we have for every design, we will have, it will include this customer, which means in the group by it will have this customer, so that this summary data will be maintained in the analysis services. And when you drag and drop sales and drag customer, it will go and get the data from the aggregation instead of calculating on the fly. So thus it will be. So we use this customer very frequently in our analysis. So I included customer. Let's say I use category and maybe primary contact, and definitely I'm not gonna use leave from and leave to. I can exclude this aggregation, these attributes from the aggregation design, and I don't use this key. And if I go to the other one, invoice date, let's say date is important, day number I may not use much, day I may not use, month I use, short month, calendar month, and all these things I need. Calendar label, physical month. So you need to select what all you are going to use in your queries very frequently. And let's say I leave the delivery date as is, and bill to customer, I go for a bill to customer full aggregations here. Now I selected what attributes should be included in every aggregation, should be excluded in every aggregation, should be decided by analysis services by selecting the different options. Or if you want to set everything to default back, you can use this button. Click on next. Here, this page is just to see the estimate count of it, partition count. So if you click on count, it will go and execute the query, and it will give you the estimates. It will give you the number of rows that are there in your partition. So nothing else is there in this page. If you click on next, here this is important, where you have to design aggregations until what is your requirement. There are 4 different options. The first one is estimate storage reaches 100 MB. So create n number of aggregations, but make sure it is not occupying more than 100 MB of size on my disk. So if you take a big cube, which is in gigabytes, and if you create aggregations, it will take like in gigabytes, like 2 gig, 3 gig just for aggregations. So if you're short of your disk space, then you can specify like, okay, create aggregations only up to 1000 MB, which means 1 gig. You can specify that, and it will, whenever the cube is processed, it will start creating the aggregations, and it will stop once it reach 10 MB. Sorry, 1000 MB here in this case. Until that, it will continue to create aggregations. Let me show you here. Start. If I click on start, it will try to create aggregations with all the attributes that I have selected and none and all. It doesn't require any aggregations. That is what it is saying. Let me do something. Let me set either full or null or default, because it's not, I mean, the data is so small, it doesn't require any aggregations. So let me try. It doesn't require any aggregations. Maybe um, the data is too small. If you have more data, then you will get aggregations and it will start designing like this. A line will be formed, a red line, and it shows like how much bytes of how much bytes occupied on your disk or required for these aggregations, and what is the performance gain of your queries. It gives you like 90% performance gain, but that doesn't mean it will be 90%. It will be close, it will be better in performance compared to the earlier stage of the cube. And it also gives you how many aggregations have been created. So let me do something. Let me add more and more dimensions, and see the data is too small. 220k 228k is nothing, and it's not creating any aggregations because of that. So let me select full for everything and see if this guy can create some at least one aggregation, so that I can show you how it looks. If you have any good database with huge data like 1,000 million records, I mean, or at least 100 million records, then you can try creating aggregations, and you see how the map, how the line chart will be drawn, and how much space it's occupied, and how many aggregations it has been designed. Every information will be given. Okay, click on next. Count. I counted this. Let me start with the aggregation design. I hope it will create at least one. No, the data is so bad. Um, Let me do something, whatever. Let me try to add some dimensions to this. Thus, it may create some aggregations. If not, then you try to get the concepts, and we cannot do much here. So I have customer, I have date, I have city. Let me add city also. And let me add sale too. Next, oops, city. Next, let me add all the attributes. Finish. Let me add sale. Okay, sale key. And I need only, I don't want these join tables. I need only one textual field that is here. What is the textual field? Description. Finish. And let me go here. Let me add those two dimensions to my cube. Sale and city. And I hope the relationships are set by default. Okay. Now let me go to aggregations. Click on next. Now I see everything. Click on next. Count the rows. Click on next. And let me start. Still, it's not creating any aggregations. So, okay. So this gives you a map saying that for how much storage on here, and the performance gain on the columns, how much storage, how much space, and how many aggregations are created. This gives you some hint, and you can decide like how much space you can allocate. Let's say if you want to go by space, you can give 1,000 gig, and you can give a try like how many aggregations it is creating, and how much the gain. These three factors are very important. You have to keep an eye on all the three factors. Or the second option is you can ask the server to continue and create aggregations until the querying performance gain reaches at least 30%. That is what it means. Or you can specify, I want at least gain of 60%, create n number of aggregations, and don't stop until the performance gain reaches 60%. And the third one is until I click stop. So if I continue, it will continue to create, and until I click stop. So until I click the stop button. But here there is no aggregations design, and hence it's not showing anything. And fourth one is do not design any aggregations, which means don't design any aggregations for this. So I prefer to go with the performance gain of 60% because storage is nothing these days. You can get a terabyte so easily, right? So I go by 60% gain generally in general, and I'll name it as sales aggregations, and deploy and process now, or sales aggregation but do not process them. If you select the first one, it will deploy this and it will process this aggregation design and everything. Or if you save the aggregations but do not process now, means it will just save it and it will be processed when you process the whole cube. Let me select the first option. It saved, it deployed, and it is processing now. So when you have huge data, like at least 10 million records in your fact table, you can see some aggregations creating when you use these options. Okay, I tried to insert some data here. Let's quickly give it a try if it creates some aggregations for the same. Next, click on next, see the count. The count is, I don't know why the count is still showing. I'll correct it. Click on next. And let me try to create aggregations. It's still the same. Let me see what is wrong in the partitions and why it is showing only the count of this is by table. This is all good. Let me process the cube to see whether it's reading all the fact data or no. Okay. Okay. Let me go. You don't try to understand these issues. Let me fix these issues. It's saying I need to process the dimension. So let me quickly process it. Okay. So now let me process the cube. Okay, and let's see how many records will get into the cube now. Okay, it read all the records. So let me quickly process. Let me quickly try to create the aggregations now. So I'm going in aggregations tab and I'm designing it. Next, next, and let me see the count now. Why don't I give the count as 5? Okay, click on next, start. Okay, it is not going for any aggregations. Forget about that. So at least you understood the concept, right? I'll try to. I mean, if you have a real time, I mean, real good database, then we can see some aggregations. Here it is not creating any aggregations at all. Let me take out this, delete, and let me open this. Okay, click on next, next. Okay, so I thought of showing you. Let me at least Google it if you have any image how it looks if the aggregations are created. Which one is aggregations page? Okay, this is how it looks. If you see here, estimated storage reaches, it looks like this is pretty old server, analysis server. And if you see, it shows like how much MB of space here and what is the percentage gain and how many aggregations it has been created. So it created 11 aggregations which occupied 0.3 MB with 65% of the gain. So the same way here he mentioned 65% of the gain, that's why it has created like this. So this is how it looks. The line will be drawn if you get the data. Okay. And try to, when you are practicing, try to do something. Try to add all the dimensions that are possible with the wide world importance database. And the more the dimensions, the more the aggregations it will be requiring and it will be creating. So give a try with that. If not, even I'll try to create one offline. And if that works fine, then I can show you in the session tomorrow. So this is about the aggregation design. You can define the aggregations. Like let's say you designed it for partition sale, and if you have multiple partitions in the same, then you can use this like by using the assign aggregation design property. If you select by right clicking on the partition, assign aggregation property, it will show you what are all the aggregations that you have created in this cube, and you can assign it for which partition you want to assign for this, and you can click on OK. Let's say you have 10 partitions here under the sale, partition 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can select all those things, right click, and assign aggregate. If you right click here, then it will say assign aggregation, and what you need to do is what aggregation design you want to assign, and you have to select the fact tables that it should be assigning. So once you define the aggregation design for one partition table of one partition of a measure group, then it will be this almost the same for the other stuff. That is why you have the option of assigning the aggregation design. I mean, if you use an attribute ABC or attribute customer, if you create an aggregation by selecting customer as full in the aggregation design, the same attribute will be used in all the other partitions too. That's why you can assign the same aggregation for the other partitions of the same measure group. Remember that, of the same measure group, not the different measure groups. So that's the option, assign aggregations. And the second kind of aggregations here are usage-based aggregations. So if you see the icon here, this is usage-based aggregations. So this helps in creating the aggregations or designing the aggregations based on actual usage of the user. In the first case, we are predicting, okay, this attribute will be used more, that attribute will be used less, that this attribute will be used in every weight class and so on. But in the second case, here you will be going to the history of the data and you can execute it. Here you see there is nothing. Nothing is enabled. You cannot check anything. So the reason is you need to set a property to store the data of every query to enable this one. So let me show you what you need to set. Actually, that will be taken care by the administrators if you raise a request, but it's good to have some idea on that. So to enable the usage-based aggregations, you need to do something before. You have to connect to the SQL Server Management Studio and go to the properties. Under the properties, you see few options. Create query log table, which means whatever the query that user triggered on the cube will be stored in this one. So if I say true, and then it will ask me for the connection, what connection I have to give. If you see here, these are the properties that you have to be setting for enabling the usage-based aggregations. So the second option is connection string, where you want to store the table. Let me store the table in my SQL server. I don't know the name. At least I don't want to type the name. Let me look for it here. Come on. I should have used localhost or dot for instead of this. Okay. And here you have to select the database. Let me select wide world importers.db. Test connection is just to verify whether the connection is valid or not. And the query log sampling means if you specify some number out of 10 queries, if you give 10 out of 10 queries, one query will be stored in the database. So if I give it to 1, then for every query that is triggered by the user will be stored in the database. If users queried the cube 1,000 times, all the 1,000 queries will be stored in the database. And what is the table name? OLAP query log. If I select OK, and now if I go here, wide world importers, and if I refresh it, and if you see, the table is created. So I set the properties to create a table and to enable the query logs, which means log every query on the server. Now, if I execute top 10 rows, initially there is nothing because it is just created. Now, to get the data into this table, what you need to do is you don't need to do anything. If users start using your cube, then you'll get data into this automatically. So these usage-based aggregations will be created after your cube is live for certain period of time. Once you move your cube to the production, then once users start using it, the queries will come into this into this table, and these queries will be used to create the aggregations. Let me show you that with example. So for example, here let me browse a cube. Wide world works. And browse it. And let me drag this, let's say dummy, execute, and let me go here, and let me select city. You see the query is inserted, and let me drag country, and you see another query. Because I specified every query log sample, I have given 1, so every query will be stored here. And you see what is the duration it has taken, what is the start time, and what is the data set. This is key. The data set is very important. So the data will be stored in the form of zeros and ones. If you observe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there are total 6 set of zeros and ones separated by comma, right? In every case it is the same. So what it is telling is how this is calculated is there is every attribute will be treated as 0 and 1. So this is the first attribute of the first dimension, second attribute of the first dimension. If it is used, then it will be set to 1. If it is not used, then it will be set to 0. So that is how it will be calculated. Now let me drag something from build to customer, execute, and let me go here, and you see this has defined a different 101 something. You see, whatever the attribute is selected, it will be 0. It will be 1, else it will be 0. So this is nothing but all the attribute list in the cube. If you count it, this count will be equal to the number of attributes that you have here. 1, 2, 3. I think this is the cube here maybe. And if you drag one more, you should be able to see the data in that one too. Let me show you that. Let me execute it. And now you see this is the 3 attribute 1, which means the build to quantity dimension, and 1 is selected. What is that 1? That 1 is build to customer. Now let me select build to customer category, and now 2 should be selected from that. If you see here 0, 1, 1. So what it will store is, it will take all the attributes and it will create 0101 of it based on the attribute selection. And if I take out the first one, for example, and now it will create one more, and it will be converting from 1 to 0 for one of these. So this has been changed, 1 to 0. You see this? So that means this attribute, whatever the one that I have removed now, is this particular one, 1 to 0. So this is how, if you leave it for let's say a month, how many queries will be captured? Every query will be captured, and who is the user that ran it, and what is the object path, and what is the database. Everything will be captured. This is really a nice option if you want to really improve the performance of very frequently used queries. So now if you see, I ran it 5 times and it's capturing the time, and and all the queries are recorded. Now let me go back and try to create the usage-based aggregations. So click on next. Now you see everything got enabled, and it is showing the dates. What is the minimum date it has data from, and by default, I can select based on the users. Like if I select here, it will show you what are all the users that has queries triggered. If there is a key user for my cube, I can select that key user and I can create for this guy. And also I can create most frequently used queries, 50%. And then here it's an option to select. But to get this option, you need to enable your query logs in your analysis services properties. Click on next, and these are the client requests. And if you see customer.customer, customer.customer, comma bill to customer, all the ones are showing here now. The zeros will be eliminated and all the ones are showing here now. And the average time is given here and how many occurrences are. And click on next, count. Okay, click on next. I still hope it will not create any aggregations, maybe 1 or 2. Okay, fortunate. It created one aggregation for the combination that we have given, and the performance is optimization level is 100%, and the space occupied is 13.2. Let me try to give 200% and see if this works. It will create more. No, its max is 100%. Or until I click stop, it won't create more because the number of queries we have. If I execute the same after a couple of days, there may be more aggregations created because we'll be trying different options, right? Different queries in the analysis services. Let me quickly go back. And let me get most frequently used 100% queries. I may get 2 more queries extra. Click on next and continue. So it's creating only one aggregation. So this is what I was trying to show you, how it shows you what is the performance gain, what is the number of aggregations, and the space. It's your job to decide and to balance this stuff. Let's say your space, if your storage is too much, then you can reduce it to 60% performance gain and see how many aggregations are creating and how much space it is taking. Once you have decided, you can name it as usage based, and you can merge with the existing one or you can create a new one, and I can apply it to sale, finish, and I don't need this anymore because this does not have any aggregations created, and the sale will have this one aggregation now, and if you process it, this aggregation will be used whenever you query the cube. So this is how you define the usage based aggregations. Okay, that's it. That's about the aggregation design, and it helps the querying performance. Now let's see the perspectives. Perspectives are just it's a concept where users can create a view on top of the cube. Let's say this is the default perspective, or whatever. Whenever you create a cube, there will be one default perspective, and for the other things, you can create a name, like not this here. You can give a name, and if you want to show only few measures from here, let's say I don't want to show any newly measured, few measures to this guy or any guy who access this perspective, or else I can say like this: deployed date data. So I'll have all the facts in here, and I'll have a customer. I may not have customer, and I may not have invoice date, or I may have customer but I will not have invoice date because this is delivered date data. And I'm unchecking this bill to customer. Sorry, checking, because this can be there, this can be there, and I don't want to show any calculations to these guys. So here I'm creating a view to hide few measures and attributes that I don't want to show. Okay. Now, if you see here, I created one perspective with the name deployed date data, and if I selected one more, invoice date data, I'll have everything checked except the deployed date. Sorry, delivered date. My bad. I typed it as the deployed, and I don't want to show again any calculated measures. So I created two views on top of the regular cube. So we named it as two different. I mean, we named it with delivered date data and invoice date data perspectives. Now, if I deploy it, you can see these perspectives also. Let's say you have a big cube and you don't want to, I mean, users don't like to see all those stuff. Let's say you confirm 3 to 4 data marts into one. And if you don't want to show all the attributes and all the dimensions or all the measures to one set of user who is interested in only 2 dimensions out of 20 dimensions you have in the cube, then you can create a perspective and you can ask the user to create the perspectives. So if you go to the browser, let me reconnect it. And how can we test these perspectives? If you select here, what is that? This is sale, somewhere here. This, one second, let me minimize this. Wide world works. Tags. This is a new query window for me. So, okay, let me do one thing. Let me process it. Language is here. Where is the perspective? Okay, let me quickly process it. Okay. Now it will be some icon here. I'm trying to find out that. Hide this, reconnect. This is for role testing. And here you see the perspectives is shown up. Now if I select only invoice date data perspective, you won't see that particular delivered date. And also you will not be able to see any calculated measures. I don't know why showing. Let me quickly see the perspective. Oh, this Y is checked. So except these two, all the remaining calculated measures has been hidden. So it just hides the data. Similarly, another perspective where you have delivered date but not the invoice date. You see the delivered date is here. It's just like limiting the number of attributes and measures and the calculated measures in the view. So this is used to this is useful if users are particularly interested in any few set of dimensions to slice and dice the data when you have a huge queue. And you cannot provide any security based on this. This is just a view on top of the view. Don't assume that you can hide the attributes and you can provide security. This is not the perspectives is not the right one for providing the security. Any questions here in perspectives? Okay, now we already, I mean, this is about perspectives and we already discussed about translations in dimensions, the same translations here. So if you see in dimensions, we have an option to give the attribute names and the dimension names. Here you will get a chance to give the dimension names and perspective names if there are any, and named set names, calculated measure names, and measures names. So the one that was missing over there will be given here. So if you want to implement the translations for the whole cube, this is the best place. But here you cannot. Here you cannot give the translation for the attribute names. So keep in mind, to give the to use the power of complete translations, you have to give the translations for the attributes in the dimensions, and for the name, I mean for the measures and the calculated measures and the dimension names and the perspectives, you can give it here. So it's same as the other one. You have to create the new translation and select the country and give the names, what it is called in that particular country language, local language. So this will be shown when you try to use the translation. I selected Arabic something Jordan, right? Let me quickly process and show you the same. I can just deploy. Okay, now let me go to the browser, reconnect, and I think this is the one I selected. And you see the names, DS, FG, GS, something. I selected something for the measure. So this is how you can use the translations at cube level, same as the translations in the dimension level. So let me go to the default language, and the default language for the translations will be the language that you create this cube. For us, it's English. If you want to delete it, just delete the translations. So that's it about the translations. Now let's quickly see KPIs, key performance indicators. So KPI I mean, as you all know, KPI stands for key performance indicators. So you are finding out whether a person or whether a product or whether a business is going good or not. You will. So for example, if you say that a particular batsman is really good, then you will look at his key performance indicators and decide, based on that indicators, you will decide whether he's a good or not. So if a batsman scored at least 60 as an average in every match, then you say this guy is doing good. Or if you go by product, if the sales of this product this year is at least 10% greater than last year, then it is going good. So you will have some goal to decide whether a product or a person or a particular business is doing good or not. So these KPIs will give you a visualization for that. So to create a KPI, you need to use this create new KPI button, and you can give the name. Let's say, for example, sales KPI. And what measure group you want to associate it with, you can select that measure group. Here for us, it's a sales. Value expression is what is the value that you are comparing. Let's say runs is the value, or sales is the value. Okay, let's say in my case, profit is the value. Okay, and or did I calculate any percentages here? Year on year. Let me take year on year. I want to see what kind of data I'm getting into year on year before creating the calculation. Better go for profit. So I'm going by profit, and if I select the customer, where is that? So this is the customer, and I'm creating a calculated measure here to calculate what is the profit compared to the all other customers or all other members. So I'm creating a calculated measure, profit percentage, and I'm creating an expression called what kind of expression I can give, like for example, for customer, profit divided by, what is that, customer. This works only for customer. I'm writing a simple calculated measure. So I'm going to customer, all comma profit Don't worry about this. You need to know about MDX for this one. So I'm selecting the percent. Let me deploy it, and let me show you what kind of data you will be getting here. So I deployed it. Let me reconnect it, and let me get the profit percentage. Let me go to the wide world importers because I'm not included in this perspective. So profit percentage, and this works only for the customer. And if I execute it, you see this guy is 0.0015%. The percentages are so poor, right? The percentages are so poor. Okay, forget about that. You are getting some percentages here, right? You are getting some values. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a KPI to say if the percentage profit is at least 0.001% or greater, then it's performing good. Let's assume. And if it is performing between 0.0 to 0.001, then it is performing okay. And if it is anything less than 0, then it is performing poor. Okay, so I calculated the percentage profit here. Now let me create a KPI on it. So instead of YOY, I'm going for profit percentage. So this is my value, and the goal, I can leave it blank for now. And the status indicator is what it says, whether it has to be red, green, or amber, and what kind of indicator you want to see. If you select shapes, it will give you green dot, yellow dot, and red dot based on the values, based on the kind. And if you give traffic lights, you know, green, red, and amber will be given. Similarly, road signs, it will be up, which means it is good. It will be horizontal arrow, which is it is moderate, and it is down arrow, which means it is poor. Similarly, gauge, it will be red, amber, and green, and it will be in the either green or red. So you have different kinds of options. So let me go with shapes here. Here, this is important. I have to write the case statement or the statement which defines my KPI status. So here I have to write an MDX statement. It takes MDX case when. See, this is another problem. You see, you can't even read the characters when the black background is there. Case when this profit is greater than 0.001, then 1. I'm giving 1. Okay, somehow I tried. I'm able to change the background color. I think this is looking at least better. So case when I'm telling the server, I know the values are 0.0012 and so on. If profit percentage is greater than 0.001, then show it as green. And when the same profit is greater than 0, which means the first case is failed, then I'll set it to 0, else -1 n. If you observe here, whatever the condition you write, the values should fall into 1, 0, and -1, because this is the indicator 1, 0, and -1. 1 means it is going good. The expression, whatever you're checking here, should be like greater than 0.001%, should say that it is trending positively. It is good. Okay. The second expression, whatever you said before 0, like if it is at least greater than 0, then it is amber. It is not worst. It is performing better. And the third case is -1, which is less than 0, and it is not at all good. So if I quickly deploy it, run, I inserted some records, and it is taking a lot of time every time when I process. 2028. Okay, close, and you have a button here to browse it, I think. And let me hide this. And you see sales KPI. This is good. And if I select a particular customer hierarchy, customer name equals to or in, I can select super customers, which is top 10 customers, and it is giving 0.15% is the total sales KPI, and it is green. Now you can see this better in Excel, the KPI testing. Let me open Excel and let me open a new data connection to my analysis services. Dot next. Let me select wide world importers. Next. Finish. Select OK. Now, if I select this KPI, it's not yet showing in the cube. Let me deploy it. The value property is not specified, so something is missing in the KPI. Let me edit that. Okay, the value expression. Who created this? Delete. This is the one we have created. Okay, so let me deploy it real quick. It got created by mistake, I guess. So this is deploy, and let me reconnect here. Why don't I see the KPI here? Looks like I selected the perspective. Let me go to the data, and from other sources, let me create. Say I selected the perspective instead of selecting the cube because this is not included in the perspective. So here, this guy was selected instead of wide world importers DW database. Sorry, DW cube. So let me select it, and this is the new pivot I've created, and you must see the KPIs now. So this is the sales KPI, and if you select the sales KPI, it will show you the value, and this is 100% and the profit. This is the percentages based. And now, as I said, this KPI will work better if you have the customer, because I have written the calculated measure in such a way that it works on customer better. So if I select the customer, you see for this customer it is 0 or blank, so it is showing in red, and anything above 0.001 it's showing green. So here if you see, it's all green because everything is 0.00 greater than 0.001 or whatever we have given. And here this is amber. This is between 0 and the number that I have given. So this is how the KPI gives you clear, easy visualization. If you see, okay, you can easily say, okay, all the greens are good, so only 1 or 2 are reds. You have to take care of that. The product of the sales are pretty poor for those few, so you have to correct it. So this is how you can analyze your you can use the KPIs to analyze your business, or you can use your KPIs to design your dashboards. But these KPIs are, when they started in analysis services, it was very much used in many projects by the users. But now this KPI concept is not being used very frequently in the projects. The reason is every reporting tool has their own KPI structure, KPI feature. Let's take SSRS. You can pull the data from SSAS and you can create KPIs on SSRS. So when you have an option to modify, edit, see, if you have to modify here, you have to deploy it here. In the other case, if you deploy the report, it's all good. Whatever the changes they want to make, they can make the changes. And this KPI, if you have it in cube, it is fixed for all the views in the reports. If you have 100 reports, if you have this KPI feature in the reporting side, then for all the 100 reports, you can have different condition checks. Instead of setting a default value like 0.001 in every case, for each report specific, you can create your own KPIs. That is the reason people are not using KPIs much, but just to have some idea what is the KPIs and all, this is a simple MDX I've used. Similarly, you can use complex MDX. And here I calculated the profit of it, right? The trend expression is, it shows how the trend is moving. It is same as KPI status, but the only difference, people use it to see how it was last year and how it is this year, compared to last year, how it is now. So instead of here, we calculated the parent. What is the percentage of the parent? Here you can say that, okay, what is the last year sales to this year sales? Based on that, you can have 0, 1, and -1. It will show as trend, like how much it was last year to this year, whether it's trending up or trending down and going at moderate, amber level. So what you need to do is, you need to write a complex MDX query, little complex MDX query, using the parallel periods to go back to the previous period and compare the values with the current period values, and then see if these values are better or not. If current year values are better, then it is trending up. If the current year values are poor, then it is trending down compared to the previous years. That is how the trend is calculated, right? And if it is same as the last year, then it doesn't make much difference, so it is amber. So that kind of expressions, and we can revisit this too, trend expression, or I can write one now, but it's not, you can't understand what I'm writing, but get the concept what it is. And additional properties, only key thing is display folder where you want to display this, and if it is a parent, if there is a parent for this. So if you define a parent here, like if you select another KPI as parent here, then it will assign some weight to this, and this can be used in your parent. The value of this can be used in your parent, but you need to specify what is the parent KPI here. And we don't go to that level. And current time member will give you, it's just an MDX expression will give you what is the status of this, not much used one. And weight is nothing but it gives you some weight for this particular KPI when it is seen from its parent, when it is used from its parent. And the description gives you just a brief description about what this KPI is doing, or what is the purpose of this KPI. So the status is most frequently used out of the KPIs, just to get the status, whether it's trending up or trending down, or whether it's amber, green, or red. And this trend expression is to see how it is trending compared to the last year's sales. So it should be pretty straightforward. If you have this case statement, okay, and this is for current year profits, right? And what you can do is, you can go for previous year for the delivery date. It's again MDX. That's why I'm not trying to add more and more related to the MDX. So you have to go for current. So this previous year, whatever the period, you have to write a parallel period function in MDX for this, and current year for this. Instead of greater than, I'll write in text so that you'll understand. And we will see an example when we know MDX. So previous year sales or profit divided by current year profit is greater than, let's say, 0.90, which means greater than 90%, at least 90%. Then it is trending good. If you set it to 60%, then greater than 60%, you can set it to trending moderately, same closely. Else you can set it to -1. So the only difference is, compared to the status, you are taking the values of the previous years or previous week or previous month to get this trend. That's the only difference. Apart from that, it's all the same. It will be always 0, 1, -1 in both the cases. And trend indicator, how you want to indicate, by arrows, or status arrow, or reverse status arrow, or faces. Faces means it will be like smiley, dash, and the sad face. So this is about the KPIs, and we will revisit the calculations and KPIs as I mentioned earlier, and also actions once we learn the MDX concepts. A lot of time functions we need to know to use this trend expression. So that's it for today's session, and we will see actions and what kind of errors that you will see in analysis services and what is the meaning of each error and how to fix the errors. This is the key part in analysis services, and don't miss the next session. See you guys in next session. Thanks for joining today.